Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing nonprofit, educational, or personal use, tips a balance in favor of fair use. Okay, you guys, this is from ABC News. It's a little older. However, it's important. I hope somebody's making some type of a master list as to each boat and who was on it. Maybe I will one day. I'm just not ready to do that yet. Reporter Sarah Collerton, dated 11 March 2010, abc.net.au, Australia. A former Scientologist who says she was a child slave, and alleges she saw a 6-year-old boy chained up. A 6-year-old boy chained up in a ship's hold. Is disappointed the Senate has blocked a full inquiry into the religious organization. And everybody out there, you should be asking yourself why. I know, but I'm not talking about it here. Independent Senator Nick Xenophon has been calling for a full inquiry into the church since revealing claims of forced abortions and other abuses in Parliament last year. Karen, 54, grew up in the church and has asked the ABC to identify her only by her first name. So now we got another victim, you guys. Victim, child victim. She says she was a victim of hard labor, mental brutality, and separation on Scientology ships. Which were used for the church's elite band of followers in the 1960s to 1970s. She is angry the motion for a Scientology probe has been blocked in Parliament. That's where Nicole Kidman is from. Not that she has anything to do with it. I'm just saying. Australia is an egalitarian society. Scientology is not egalitarian, she told ABC News Online. There is no protection for workers and no protection for children. It's the push for the inquiry that has brought me out of the woodwork. Karen says her mother was a founding member of the church and went on to become the CEO of Scientology in South Africa. It should be banned. It's a very dangerous pseudo-religion and corporate enterprise. And it really needs to be looked at very closely, she said. If it's not looked at very closely and monitored, and checks and balances put in place, then one day people are going to look back and say, this is bad news, and we did nothing. Pretty obvious that we are surrounded by evil, isn't it? The structure is very totalitarian, just like the Nazis. And I just think it's very bad for mental health. They need to look into the separation of families. And people are compliant. It's a fact. I know many broken families because of Scientology. Karen wants an inquiry to investigate living and labor conditions as well as schooling for children, working for the organization at a young age. How is it that Denmark knows it's wrong? Huh. This is 2010, so that is 14 years ago. Wonder how many child R's have happened since then. There is a belief in Scientology that normal schooling simply indoctrinates you with social norms and ideologies. So they prefer to indoctrinate with their own ideologies, with the result that Scientology children, if they manage to leave, are usually unskilled and uneducated. That's the plan. This forces them back into the world they know. In other words, Scientology recreates its own labor force, she said. People just get so brainwashed, and it's made so difficult for people to leave. Intentionally. They just don't. Staff members don't get paid, so they can't accumulate money to leave. If only they knew how easy it really was to leave. It's all in the mind. It might not be a walk in the park, but there are a lot of people out here that would help, and employers would be paying them probably 30 to 40 times what they're making now, if not even more than that. There's a belief system that if you find something wrong with Scientology, then there's something wrong with you. Well, that's how they keep you bound. That's instilled in you so deeply that it's very hard to shake. That's what they do to the Scientologists. So they imprison themselves. They imprison their own minds. If you guys haven't figured out this all had the stamp of approval for people in power, I don't know what to tell you. Nightmare childhood. Karen's decision to speak openly about her experiences come after ABC One's Four Corners program, The X-Files, in which former members told of forced abortions. You guys know who's into that, right? Pressure to work extreme hours and being forced to hand over large sums of money, otherwise known as extortion. Extortion. Members of Scientology's elite unit of full-time staffers, the Sea Organization, or Sea Org, detailed allegations of a strict regime of discipline and punishment in place during the 1960s. Scientology has denied the claims, but Karen says she can back up the allegations. She says she signed a billion-year contract as a 12-year-old. 12-year-old. Lived on the Scientology vessels, the Royal Scotsman and the Athena. Oh, those are two new names. And was in effect a child slave. Sounds very reminiscent of Alaska Paris, doesn't it? Huh. When we were on the ship, we had people working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, she said. It was a nightmare for me and my brother. For most of our lives, we were separated from our mother because she was in the Sea Org. See, this is what gets me, is how people word this. And I understand there's probably some disassociation. But obviously her mother agreed to that. Maybe under duress, but she agreed to it. It's like they say it in third person. A lot of the children hadn't seen their parents for months, and their parents were on the same ship. Oh, wow. Why there was never a mutiny is beyond me, honestly. She says what she saw happen to one child, a 6-year-old boy named Larry, still haunts her today. I've carried him with me all my life, and I want to put it on record what I saw, she said. While working on one of the Sea Org boats, which was a former cattle ship, Karen heard a clinking sound and found the boy in the hold. Again, more of this. There's just various rooms that they keep the children in. It's called you've got the chain room, you've got the engine room. This is called the I guess the chain room. Larry was chained. Listen, this is a 6-year-old boy, you guys. Larry was chained by his leg, and he was there for a few days. They chained him. Can you believe this? You guys know it was adults doing that. That's why we need to get the ship logs. He was fed, but he was chained. It's like a dog. I'm sure they didn't give him good food. She says she was forced to disconnect from her father, who did not want to be part of the church. That's the first thing they do, you guys. They say they don't break up families, but they most definitely do. I kind of want to break this apart. See, this is where I have an issue. Everybody's always saying they say. Like she said, they say they don't break up families. But everybody's participating, you see. I'm not trying to be like the mean girl, but on Four Corners Scientologist Tommy Davis, oh, this should be great, claim they have no disconnection policy. That's an outright lie. Unless they've changed that. I was told to disconnect from my father, that he would suppress us. I was told to write a letter to him when I was 6 to disconnect from him. L. Ron Hubbard. Originally, the prospect of sailing the high seas, having adventures and not going to school anymore, was exciting to Karen. But she soon realized the reality of life in the Sea Org. She says it was worse than jail. My brother was allocated a job in the engine room. Listen to this, you guys. More children in the engine room. Of the shift as a greaser. He was 10. You know, in my opinion, some of this disconnection and disassociation, some of it is cover-up. Some of it is cover-up. I didn't see him for weeks, and then one day I bumped into him in the doorways between the dormitories. And he was this little thing, covered in grease with these big red eyes. And he saw me and he started crying. Aw, poor baby. And he said he wanted to go home. Aw. That is so sad. At that stage, you could petition the Commodore, who was L. Ron Hubbard, who was living on the ship, in his luxury apartment. Isn't that great? I petitioned him and he went home straight away. But you had to have a replacement for him. So I took my brother's place in the engine room. Wow. This is child trafficking on crack. Child trafficking on crack. And even though a lot of the adults were children too, there has to be a point where you just figure it out that this isn't right, right? You got a 40-pound, 10-year-old boy working in an engine room. I mean, even if you were born into it, come on now. Oh boy. While Karen was not aware of any forced abortions, she said she remembers cruel punishments, such as people being locked in dark hatches. It's like the ship of horrors. and at other times being forced to do hard labor at double time. I'll bet black tooth, pot belly, no haircut, fake military L. Ron Hubbard didn't ever do that kind of stuff. Pathetic. Okay. She remembers people being locked in dark hatches and at other times being forced to do hard labor at double time. One of the punishments they had was throwing you overboard. You guys, tell me that none of these children died. Prove it. Tell me that none of these children died. I believe that was part of the panic that set in with Hubbard and all his other cronies to no longer allow children in the Sea Org. I think some of these children died. I'll bet you their little skeletons are out there in the ocean. It's my opinion. They had was throwing you overboard, which happened to my mother on a regular basis, she said. See, also too, I think that's part of how they, like, say you have a mother that does care about her children and does not want them to be abused. What better way to get her in line than to keep throwing her off the ship? So I try not to be harsh, I mean, I do think there's some cover up, but also some of the adults were being so badly abused that they couldn't protect their children, even if they wanted to. And I bet a lot of them did try. That's a terror. That's to inflict terror. Those thrown overboard were rescued, allegedly. Karen also knew Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard and recalls seeing him around the ship in a white sailor suit. What a piece of garbage he was. Fake Navy. Couldn't even make it in the Navy. He was a very powerful, enigmatic figure, she said. He was fake, is what he was. As an individual, he had a very powerful force about him, and I could see people would quiver in his presence. They were scared of him. That's not power. That's just terrorizing people. He had immense self-belief in the... Yeah, that's a narcissist that is like this. In the flesh, he didn't wander around like some demented, nutty professor. It's called like creating this false narrative that narcissists do. They're good at it. Tracking her down. Karen, who moved from South Africa to Australia in 1989, worked on the ships until she was 13. Listen to that. Worked on the ships until she was 13. When she was rescued by her grandmother. Well, thank God somebody had some sense. For years, she has kept the torment to herself and only occasionally spoken about it to her brother, who is still bitter and angry about their upbringing. I wonder if she could add to the witness statements. It aligns with exactly what happened with Valeska Paris and the guy, one person. I forgot the first name, Baxter. Karen was left frightened after Scientologists tracked her down on Facebook and called her 42 years after she left the organization. Wish they'd come to my little town, showing off. Got something. I thought it was well and truly behind me, she said. That's not power either. They're not powerful. They're reaching you through Facebook. Give me a break. She also says that they have been harassing her brother, who still lives in South Africa, calling him day and night. Just rip the phone out of the wall. That's what I would do. Big business. Karen says over the years, Scientology has changed from the more idealistic early days. They've really refined their acts and become very slick at marketing and promotions and corporate management, she said. Not anymore, they're not. They're still doing what they've always done, but they've just morphed into something slicker. So they're much more dangerous than they were before. Not anymore. Not anymore. Tides are turning. I'm really nervous about when it's going, where it's going. It's just infiltrated so many educational programs, management programs. Yeah, that's one of their, where they get people is they create these management programs and go and get like dentists and chiropractors and all these different employers. When I hear John Travolta and Tom Cruise come out and say, this is the way, I think, have you actually ever been behind the scenes of the Celebrity Center to see how they live? They don't, she said. I believe Travolta and Tom Cruise know very well how awfully and horribly these people are living. They absolutely know. The hard work is done by staff members. The people that have money do what people with money always do. They just throw money at stuff, and people are nice to them. And Scientology has always courted celebrities because that is their legitimization, and it's working. It's just like, if you go to a church and they do testimonies, similar. If there's one thing I can say, though, because Tom Cruise jumped on that stupid couch, that actually started the ridicule, and the ridicule has grown bigger and bigger and started to undermine Scientology's image. Scientology has changed. The ABC has approached the Church of Scientology about Karen's claims. Well, there's going to be more lawsuits, Scientology, so you should get ready. Scientology's Australia spokesman Cyrus Brooks, I can't wait, says after the Sea Org was formed in 1967, it took several years to settle itself, and there were a few staff who were violating the church policy at that time. Isn't that funny? It's always the same thing. Oh, you're committing crimes. Can be a pedophile, but, you leave the church and then you're a criminal. What we have today is far from its earliest days, he said. Oh boy. As we have grown and evolved, we have formulated strict regulations as to conduct of staff and conditions, and we also have a much firmer screening policy of those who apply and join. Wah, 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 wah. He says children have not been allowed to join the Sea Org for more than 20 years. And aren't they hilarious? They just lie with a straight face. However, the ABC's Four Corners investigation found members have been recruited and separated from their families from the age of 14 since then. Nothing like some good child labor, huh? Mr. Brooks says the Sea Org's 5,000 members, who are now on dry land, do not get paid. Wait for this, guys. We don't expect a wage, and we don't do it for a wage. We know this before we join, and it is a major decision to do so, he said. Isn't that great, you guys? We understand that we are going to be working almost full time, including a work day, along then with the religious studies and practice daily. Let's just remind everyone that children do the same thing. Isn't that fantastic? And all the governments throughout the world, they're just like super fine with all of that. They like it. They like that money. Let the children work. Mr. Brooks says if members are in touch with people the church opposes, then you're PTS. They cannot go to church services. They sure do push that church idea, don't they? It's funny. No pews, no incense, no crosses, no religious symbols. They do try to fake the cross though, which is, to me, I'm not a religious person, but that's sacrilegious and disrespectful. If a current member by way of family connection or another relationship is connected with someone who is violently opposed to Scientology and engaging in conduct to attack the church, we state that while the upset remains, they are unable to have church services until they resolve the situation, he said. Still pushing that church service stuff. What, being on course and paying like thousands of dollars is church? A person who is connected with someone against their religious faith by experience, propaganda, does not make spiritual gains, propaganda, as any gains they make are invalidated by the antagonistic source. So that's it, you guys. I will leave a link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Peace.